Okay. You may be wondering what this is. I painted it. Yes. I painted this during a few sessions of a painting class last year. I like it, I really do. And no, I know it's not that good. Certainly not good enough to drag it across the country from Vancouver to show people at a conference that has nothing to do with painting or art. Certainly not that good. I'm not that delusional. But I like it. I really do. Because before I signed up for those sessions, for those painting sessions, I really didn't expect how profoundly it would change how I see the world. Before that, I would look at a tree, and I would just see green. Now I look at the same tree, and literally I can see 10 different shades of green. I sometimes even notice a hint of orange, maybe a blue undertone even. Now I can see how different values of the same color, and yes, colors, I realize, come in different values too, can change the sense of depth in a landscape. Playing around with those colors, mixing paints, trying out different brushes, they didn't make me a painter, but they gave me something much more powerful. They gave me a new lens to be able to see things that I wouldn't otherwise. The other day, I found my husband staring at his phone with a smile, so naturally I had to see what it was. And it was this. A math formula, apparently Euler's formula. My husband has a background in math, so he can see a beauty in this that I don't, maybe except for the colorful font, but to me, it's just a formula. It hit me that when we are introduced to a new word, it can be a new form of art, literally a new language, Japanese, maybe music, maybe chess, we start seeing things that we wouldn't otherwise. We start noticing patterns. We start getting more observant, more curious in that word, and ultimately more innovative. I witnessed that firsthand at work too. I lead a team of data scientists at TELUS. And we work with the call center data extensively. And for decades and decades, managers of front-facing employees would coach their employees on soft skills, such as ask follow-up questions or summarize the conversation towards the end, with the goal that these soft skills would ultimately impact their performance, right? However, these assumptions or these beliefs that have guided decades of coaching programs and millions of dollars over the years, they've never been tested rigorously with data. They are mostly based on intuition. And to be fair, it's not as easy to track these soft skills with data. Until recently, because now we have the data, we have the tool. But it was pointed out by a curious AI and data literate person during a brainstorming session that I was leading a few months ago. As I mentioned, I lead this team of data scientists. They are experts in AI and data, obviously. And we have these brainstorming sessions once in a while. But my favorites are the quarterly one, when I invite people from other functions to join. And these are just so engaging. The main reason is that they are not AI experts, but they are AI and data literate. So they have the vocabulary to share ideas, to ask questions, to challenge us. And we also get to learn from them. They know what false negative or false positive is, and we get to learn what the cost of a false positive or false negative for that specific use case is. So we have the language to bounce back ideas. And it was at one of these brainstorming sessions that one of these coaches, which again is not necessarily from AI or data background, asked this seemingly simple but very powerful question. Now that we have millions of call transcripts and models that can actually understand context, can we finally test with data whether these behaviors we coach every day actually make a statistically meaningful difference? And that was an aha moment. Maybe he didn't know that, but it was a powerful AI and data literate question. And that question, that's what started our AI and data-driven coaching initiative. I'm not going to get into much of the details, but I would like to share the overall experiment that we designed, or basically the blueprint with you. We started with crowdsourcing hypotheses. What do I mean by hypothesis in this case? Just those beliefs, those assumptions, right? These are technically hypotheses. For instance, one hypothesis is that if we summarize a conversation towards the end, then there is a lower chance that customer would interact with us for the same issue again or reduce repeats, right? That's technically a hypothesis. Or if we ask follow-up questions, that would improve customer satisfaction, another hypothesis. So we crowdsourced these hypotheses from basically two sources. One, from our subject matter experts, because those decades of experience, they are still valuable, right? We just have to validate them. And the second one is just simply put, use Gen AI to basically create an initial list of hypotheses, right? So we explain the context, and we ask basically what behaviors or what skills would impact this certain KPIs. It can be sales, RGU, customer satisfaction, you name it. Then the second step is just AI scoring, right? Because as I mentioned, until recently, it wasn't very simple or straightforward to be able to identify these soft skills from the conversation. But now with large language models, especially if they are fine-tuned, it's much more than doable, right? So we would leverage large language models to basically assess the execution quality of each of these behaviors, right? And we would give it a score from novice to expert. And then, because we are sitting on years of historical data, obviously for a complete experiment, you want to create that view and leverage that historical data. What I mean by that is that basically you have this conversation, let's say, or this customer interaction, and you know from the historical data what the outcome was, if a sales happened or not after that conversation. What was the result of the customer survey after that conversation, right? So you have this historical data, so you basically join that with those scores. And then finally, that's the fun part, at least for the data scientist, that you can run this rigorous statistical testing to see that if there are any meaningful correlation between these outcomes and those AI scoring. This is end-to-end design from business perspective, from leveraging tool and AI, using historical data, and then finally data science tools. The point is, with that simple but powerful question that came not from a data scientist or an ML engineer, but from a very AI and data-aware and literate person, we managed to create this truly evidence-based guideline of best practices with overwhelmingly positive feedback from stakeholders. And what I've learned from that experience is that for innovation, we don't always need new models or new tools or new data. We need new eyes. And with that, I thank you for staying this long, and I'm here for any questions.